Well, hey, and welcome to another episode of Beetle Dustino, coming at you again today with yet another video, a little vinyl community challenge video, as I did get challenged by somebody. Yeah, so let's get this kicked off. Before I do get started though, I do want to thank all my subscribers and thanks to any new subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And do hit the notification bell also so you know when I got new videos coming out, like another challenge video or maybe even one of my own. We'll discuss that at the end. All right. And also do give the video a like. It really does help out the channel. And please leave a comment. I love having a discussion with everybody. But let's get on with this next Vinyl Community Challenge video.
So the first thing is we need to nominate 3 other members of the vinyl community to take part in this challenge. And there are a bunch of people that I want to nominate, but I'm going to nominate 3 who I think would actually do it. And 3 channels that you might not be as accustomed to. So I'm going to nominate 3. The first one is going to be Lloyd Boone, World of Music. Lloyd is down in Australia, so check out Lloyd's channel. The second is going to be Keir Smith over in the UK. Keir's a big Beatles fan. Keir Smith From Me to You is the name of the channel, and I'm going to have all their channels below. And then the third is going to be a really big Beatles channel. His name is Beetle Dustino, Dustin out in the Midwest. So,
oh my gosh, I'm nominated. I better get thinking on this. Huh, songs of the decades, huh? Songs of the decades.
I hope the 3 guys that I nominated, Keir and Lloyd, shoot.
It's me, Sam, me, Beetle Dustino. That's who you nominated, Beetle Dustino.
It was Keir and Lloyd and Beetle Dustino, Dustin. So sorry, Dustin.
All right, so Sam got that figured out. So, good, good. Yes, it's me that he nominated. I was the third one. And yes, I'll take you up on this challenge, Sam. And Jason from Spinz Vinyl. There we go. Spins me round, I was going to say. That's a record shop in Philadelphia or something. All right. I get a lot of emails from them for some reason. I bought a record from them. All right. Wow. This is really getting off the tracks already. But yeah, anyways, Jason at Spinz Vinyl, a channel I also wasn't really familiar with. It looks like they're fairly new. It looks like he's big into jazz is what I got, and 80s. Got looking at some of his from his channel. I watched his little challenge, and he wants an album from each decade, and it does sound like he's quite a vinyl guy. So I took it upon myself. It sounded like his rules were a little loose because he said anybody was welcome, vinyl or not vinyl collectors. I'm going to take it on that I'm going to only do vinyl that's in my collection with this. A vinyl from the decade. Now, not necessarily is it going to be released or issued from that, but it'll be of an album from that decade that was. So yeah, some of these are probably reissues, but that's how we're going to do it. I'm going to take it upon myself, me being Beetle Dustino. I'm going to do strictly Beatles and solo Beatles, obviously, and I'm going to keep it limited to within that decade and on vinyl, in my collection on vinyl. So we're going to do, if it's Beatles, 60s through 2020s. But this did sound like kind of a fun little challenge, and especially me making my own little rules with it, I thought, yeah, let's go for it. So let's get started with, as I said, the 60s. As I'm filming this, it's not going to be released on this day, but as I'm filming it, its anniversary today. Released on August 5th of 1966, Revolver. So it's kind of like a desert island album, one from each decade. I guess I didn't go through all the rules totally right there. One from each decade. I also forgot something else. We'll do that after we talk about Revolver. It would be the one album you'd have on your desert island. So you're allowed one from each decade, but only one album from that decade. So going Beatles. This was tough. It was tough. I had kind of a 3-way tie going between Revolver, Rubber Soul, and Abbey Road. The more I got thinking about it, I got thinking I need to have Revolver. Wow, Revolver. Since the big reissue last year with the big box set, which this is from the box set, this is the mono copy from it, and I probably would take the mono edition. I do kind of like the I'm Only Sleeping and a couple of the other ones, the little add-ons you get in the mono mix over the stereo mix that I do like a little better on this. So probably would take this mono copy. Revolver would definitely be my Beatles pick, but it was tough. there was a moment I was really set on Rubber Soul, as it is my favorite Beatles album. So you'd think I'd take my favorite Beatles album, but then again, I might have to redo my album ranking list coming up here. Has been over a year, so possibly this might be the new number one, because this is my Desert Island pick, I guess. So, but yeah, there's just so much on Revolver that it seems right. It's kind of that good blend between early Beatles and starting to get into that later Beatles with that real kind of psychedelic kind of move in that new direction that they definitely moved. This was definitely one of the albums that really pivoted them in that direction, and it would be tough not to take this with you. And aside, just looking at this album cover, I mean, I could get probably hours of entertainment just staring at this. So there we go. My 1960s pick for that album from the decade on the Desert Island. So moving on to the 70s, and this one was a no-brainer as soon as it hit my head. So I'm thinking, okay, well, you got All Things Must Pass. Oh, wonderful, wonderful album. Probably one of the best solo Beatles albums, if not even possibly one of the best, even with the Beatles thrown in there. But as the rules are a little loose, it didn't necessarily say studio albums, and an album hit my head that was perfect. Now, I wanted this to be, it had to be recorded in that decade, as that was a reissue that I showed for Revolver. And this is a reissue too, but Wings Over America. How much more perfect would it be if you only had one album from the 70s, being a Beatles fan, that you've got an album that kind of covers all of Wings's, at least up to that point, three of their probably best albums. You got Band on the Run, Venus and Mars, and Wings at the Speed of Sound. The best songs off of those three albums all on here, plus some Beatles stuff thrown into the mix. And I mean, how can you go wrong with that? Plus some of the big singles from that time. I just saw Hi, Hi, Hi as I was looking back here. This is, in my opinion, probably one of the best live albums I've ever heard. Plus, you got a triple album here. So if you only have one album, he didn't specify it had to be only a single album or a single disc. Triple album. Which All Things Must Pass would have been a triple album too when I think about it. But anyways, yes, Wings at the Speed of Sound. And this is my colored vinyl issue on it. See if I got, yeah, there we go. When Paul did that colored vinyl reissues, which I wish he'd get back to, because I'd love to see a lot more McCartney albums and Wings albums and stuff on this reissue. But yeah, I'll just show you that one. But what a perfect pick. As soon as this hit my head, it was a no-brainer. This was my 70s album, Wings Over America. So we're on to the 80s, and this one was tough. I'm trying to convince myself I can't have it be all Paul McCartney, because the majority of this is going to be Paul McCartney, without any question, because pretty much once you get past the 2000s, pretty much the 90s really, all you got to pick through is Ringo or Paul McCartney. Clearly those decades are probably going to be loaded with McCartney. We'll see as it goes. So the 80s, though, was a rough decade for Paul. Tug of War and Flowers in the Dirt, I think great albums. Nobody's going to really argue that too much. Maybe they will. I don't know. I love Tug of War. I love Flowers in the Dirt. The rest of the decade for Paul was a little rough. Now, also, I got thinking, you did have Cloud 9 and the Traveling Wilburys. I know Sam used the Traveling Wilburys Volume 1 as his, and that was an excellent pick, and that would be Beatles related. But yeah, it really kind of hit me fairly fast. I'm like, there is a great album from the 80s that I really enjoy, and I probably would pick it over Cloud 9, believe it or not, or even the Traveling Wilburys. But that would be Mr. Ringo Starr, or Mr. Richard Starkey, I should say, or Sir Richard Starkey. But Stop and Smell the Roses. What a fantastic album. I think a little underrated. Did come out in October 27th of 1981 in the US and November 20th of 1981 in the UK. Everything was recorded in the 80s, so it fits that. You've got George and Paul both on here, helping him out some. So, I mean, that's kind of cool. You do got, a little help from his friends. I always think Ringo albums that have that aspect to it always definitely work out best. Yeah, this is just a fantastic album, and I want to give it a little more praise, and I happily would take this as my 80s pick for the Desert Island, Beatles 80s pick for the Desert Island album. Stop and Smell the Roses, Ringo Starr. Now, 90s, once again, kind of a rough decade there again for them. We're down to pretty much Ringo and Paul in this decade, because George really didn't have anything. And of course, John's already gone. Yes, how sad is it that I'm going through this and no John solo album? I did forget to mention the 80s Double Fantasy. That would have been another good pick, but I think I'd have Stop and Smell the Roses over that one. So, Also, 90s, the two kind of contenders would have been Vertical Man by Ringo Starr and The Traveling Wilburys Volume 3, but one of my ultimate favorite Paul McCartney albums, Flaming Pie, did happen to come out in the 90s, May 5th of 1997 to be exact. There's no way I wouldn't take a copy of Flaming Pie with me. I would sorely miss this album if I didn't have this as a pick out on that desert island. So yeah, Flaming Pie for the 90s. And the 2000s, once again, kind of a decade that was a little rough on this. Kind of my contenders on this would have been Chaos and Creation in the Backyard, Paul McCartney, and Why Not by Ringo Starr. Both, or I'm ahead of myself on that. It was just Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. Memory Almost Full, I think, could almost make that list too. But one hit me. I had to have a George Harrison on this. And yes, he did have one in the 2000s, even though he passed away in the early 2000s. He did have one in the 2000s. This one I'm cheating on just a little. He did record some of this all the way back as into the 80s, the 90s. I think a lot of it, though, possibly was in the 2000s from what I was reading. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we'll let this one slide, I guess, because it is a fantastic album. It is Brainwashed by George Harrison. Yeah, I would much rather have this than Chaos and Creation in the Backyard, Memory Almost Full. Any of the Ringo albums from the 2000s, this would be the pick, even having to cheat a little. But this was a great album. I really enjoy this album. It ranked very high on my George Harrison album ranking. If I'm picking anything by the Beatles, solo Beatles in the 2000s, this would definitely be the pick. And this was, of course, released on November 19th of 2002. Squeaking in nice and early in the decade there. I think representing the decade well for solo Beatles. But yes, Brainwashed. If you haven't listened to it, do listen to it. It's a great album. Great album. If you have listened to it and didn't think much of it, please give it a re-listen, because this one, you need to have a few listens. It really grew on me the more and more I listened to it. Yeah, if your initial listen to it wasn't positive, give it another listen, because it will sink in and it will be great. Great album. Definitely want this on the desert island with me representing the 2000s. All right, and for the 2010s, again, we're getting a little limited here. This was where Why Not comes in by Ringo Starr. That was one of the contenders, and Paul McCartney's New. I pretty much eliminated down anything else from that decade. So you must know it's Egypt Station. And yes, this is the Traveler's edition of Egypt Station. Egypt Station was released on September 7th of 2018. I can't remember the exact date when the Traveler's edition came out. I'll have words in the corner help me out there. But yeah, I would do a little cheating again. I don't know if that's necessarily legal to have like a special edition of it. The main album was released in 2018, so was the Traveler's edition, or early 2019 at least, and all the material on it was that. And again, a triple album, so you got the double album with the main album plus the bonus disc there with the live stuff and some of the singles. And yeah, this is a very enjoyable album, great album. Yeah, for the 2010s, if this is what I got to pick, I think this is not a bad pick, especially going with the Traveler's edition. All right, cheating a little. I tend to cheat in these videos. All right, and that brings us to the final decade, the decade we're in right now, the 2020s, only about halfway through 3 years into it here. So we don't have much to pick from, especially with the Beatles. I'll go through the contenders last. I'll show you what I picked. Should be a pretty obvious pick, I would think. McCartney 3, and this is my Newberry Comics pink vinyl edition. Of course, McCartney 3 famous for all the different multicolored vinyl editions, and this was one of the only kind of special editions I got initially. It sold out fast. Matter of fact, speaking of it, seeing as we got a special one here, I'll show you that beautiful pink vinyl. I'm not going to pull it all the way out. I'll just pull it up a little here. But there we go. That nice pink. One of the more rare ones, too. So I was surprised this was one that was available yet that day. Only 1,500 copies, according to the hype sticker there. So I know most of even the other ones were at least another 1,000 copies on this. So how this one was the one that was still available, I'm not sure. But yeah, I would definitely pick this. This is a great album. Another grower. You got to listen to it a few times. I did really like it on initial listen, but the more and more I listened to it, the more and more I liked it. And I would not argue with having this as one of my albums on that desert island, especially if I'm doing my rules with it, which is strictly Beatles or solo Beatles, and done in that decade and only on vinyl. Yeah, this would not be a bad pick. Like I said, there's not much really to pick from if we're going strictly the decade it was recorded in, so forth and so on. We only really got 3 Imagine, which is kind of the remix covered version of this album, or Ringo's EPs, which is really the only other thing that you got from the 2020s, the 3 EPs that have been out so far, Zoom In, Change the World, and EP3. And I would definitely pick McCartney 3 over any of those. There we go. couple of things I forgot from the beginning. I got a kick out of it on Sam's video on this. He did show this Glenn Miller album, and I always thought this was kind of a weird album in our collection. This is actually from my parents' collection, but of course, anything from my parents' collection is kind of in my collection nowadays anyway. But yeah, he had this Glenn Miller greatest hits. I was kind of surprised. I thought this was kind of an odd disc, and always in our family, we had a friend of the family that was very into Glenn Miller. Sam said he thinks of this for summer and 4th of July, the big band music. I think of it a lot for Thanksgiving, believe it or not. This friend of the family, he was big into audio stuff, and he had his own sound business. He would rent out his sound equipment. He would transfer, and he had licensing and everything to do this. He had all kinds of recording equipment, so he could transfer old 77s, the singles that Sam had mentioned that these guys didn't even have really albums back then. It was only those singles. He would transfer those digitally and then put them onto CD for people, or recordings that they had made throughout the decades and stuff like that. But he did have licensing to do this, to transfer it and sell it to them on a digital form for their use, I suppose. Yeah, he always would have his speakers set up throughout the house, and he'd always have on Glenn Miller because he loved Glenn Miller. If I ever was in his truck with him riding, because I did help him with sound, riding around, setting up equipment and that, we were always listening to Glenn Miller more than likely in his truck. So I really got to know Glenn Miller well with him. I thought that was kind of funny. We bought this album because we loved hearing it so much too. Our family did, and I know my parents picked up this copy of it, and I really honestly thought this was kind of an oddball album. Glenn Miller's a big artist, but I thought this was kind of oddball, and I thought it was kind of funny Sam showed that. So this isn't part of my decades challenge. I just had to show I had a copy of it too, because I wonder if Sam thinks the same too. I don't know. Let me know in the comments there, Sam. But also, I did forget, and I'm not really, this is going to be totally off the cuff because I forgot it so much that I don't even have really anybody to nominate. You were supposed to nominate 3 other YouTubers out there. They got channels to do the challenge also. I'm kind of going to go like Sam. Mine are bigger channels though, so they are bigger channels. I'm going to just nominate people that I think might do it, and I know this challenge has been out there for a while, so I don't know how much longer people are going to be going on this, but I don't think Larry Graves, the Canadian Stud Muffin, has done this, so I'm going to throw him out there. I know he's been watching a lot of my stuff lately. I'm going to throw Matthew Street out there. I know he does challenge stuff every now and then, and a good friend of this channel too, and very good friend of this channel, Beatles Tone. I'm going to throw you out there on this challenge. So there we go. Larry Graves, Canadian Stud Muffin, Matthew Street, and Beatles Tone. But Sam, this was kind of a fun one. I kind of made my own rules with it, even though I'm still within the guidelines of Jason's original video there. So thanks for nominating me here, Sam. And I am going to get wrapping up because this, what I thought was going to be kind of a short video, I've turned into kind of a long one. I am going to get wrapping up. As I say, I want to thank all my subscribers, and especially thanks to any new subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and do hit the notification bell so you know when I got new videos coming out. Do give the video a like. Oops, as I said at the beginning, I was going to announce a challenge coming out. So one of my next videos is going to be a challenge of my own. It's going to be not just a challenge, but a contest. There will be a little moolah up in it. So we're going to run it for a little while here, so more details on that next video though, but just want to give everybody a heads up. I am going to have my own contest, thread, challenge, whatever you want to call that here going, so be on the lookout for that. Probably dropping Saturday will be the beginning of that, so be watching for my video and my questions I'm going to have out there for everybody to do. Please participate if you got a channel. I'd really love that, and again, more details when we get to that. All right, I am rambling again. I tend to do that as I'm wrapping up, but I kind of got mixed up in the, if you do like the video, please give it a like. And if you stuck around to this point, especially listen to me ramble, you must like it, so please give it a like. And also, please leave a comment. I love having a discussion with everybody. Let me know your thoughts on what you would do. If I didn't even challenge you, if you do got a video, or if you do got a channel going, please, even if I didn't throw you out in the challenge, tell us your albums of the decades. It was kind of a fun one to do. That's, again, I'm rambling. Ramble on. That's the Led Zeppelin, not the Beatles or Hendrix. All right. But I am going to get signing out. I'm Beetle Dustino, signing out. Oh, boy.